I get asked about stamp making an awful lot, and we're talking about polymer stamp making. Okay, so the sort of thing that you buy in the shops. And one of the questions that I get asked is about negative. How do I make a negative? What can I use, etc. So I thought I would go through different methods of making a negative for a stamp, and then you have options that you can use. Now the first one is a fairly traditional negative. I have made a stamp with this already, and it's in this packet here. The gel's not actually pink, by the way, that's just the plastic that I've put it on. And this is printed out on tracing paper with a laser printer. Standard black print on a laser printer. Now when I say a black print, it's very important if you're going to be doing a print on a laser printer or any other printer for that matter, that your black is actually black. And I don't just mean at the printer side of things, I mean in your software. Sometimes you can look at a picture and you think the background is black or the surface is black, and it actually isn't true black. So if you're designing anything, you want to make sure that your image is definitely black and white. Okay, no areas of grey, no, well it's almost black so that's black enough. No, your actual design needs to be in black and white. And then it's a case of experimenting with your printer as to get the deepest black that you can get. Now, traditionally, the idea is that, you couldn't see your finger behind here. Yeah, well, you can. And this will still make a stamp. I don't see the point in making stamps if I have to buy specialist paper, specialist sprays for the paper to make it darker, and loads of different specialist items. Okay. Yes, you need a lamp, yes, you need certain types of bulbs, and you need obviously the gel, but the rest of it is pretty much stuff you should be able to get locally and not have to pay a fortune for your sources. So that's the first type of negative, that is a standard negative. Next type of negative, and I've chosen to do this in blue, is a piece of craft paper, and this has been die cut with my silver bullet, and as you can see it's exactly the same pattern. Now you must remember when you're doing a die cut, if you can do a die cut, that your image is able to be cleanly cut and that you take away the bits that you want to print and not the other way around. Now with the method that I use, even if you're doing words, you do not reverse the text. Okay, what you see in front of you should be what you're going to get. Next way of doing a negative, and this is how I did it for quite some time before I found the print method that worked for me, is with a vinyl cut. Now I've put this piece of black vinyl, and it's a high quality vinyl. You really can't see much behind this. This is the type of stuff which you would use for a wall decoration. It could possibly be blackboard vinyl, I don't know. I just bought it from my DIY shop, and it wasn't on a roll that you just picked up and took home. They cut it off the bigger roll for you. So it doesn't come with any labels, so I can't give you manufacturers or anything like that, but it's a high quality black vinyl. It's got black glue on the back of it, and it is very sticky. The black vinyl isn't going to come into contact with the gel, so it's reusable, as indeed the rest of the negatives are. So I'm going to see if I can weed this off and then come back. The next thing I use for the stamp making is clear, colourless cellophane. These are gift bags which are cut up, and over here they're very cheap to buy, so I just buy a largish gift bag, buy them in packs of 50 or something, and I just cut them to the required size. So what you need to do is to take your negative and put it on your glass plate. Now, a word of caution regarding glass plates. I have this cut from scraps of glass at my local window store, and he cut them to size for me and he polished the edges so they're not rough, and I've been using these for years and they cost me I think €6 at the time. Now, if you're going to be using a glass and you don't know its provenance, you need to find out if it stops any or all UV light. Some glass is made to allow UV light to go through, and some is designed to stop it. And if you've got one which is designed to stop UV light, you're not going to make very good stamps. In fact, you probably won't be making any at all. You notice this spotty little thing here. This is just a piece of spotty sticky tape which I use to denote which is the base of my stamp and which is the top of it when I'm making my stamps in the sandwich. Now, the reason I've done that is because on odd occasions I've been interrupted. I have switched off my lamp after I've done one side, done something else and come back and thought, did I turn it over? Did I not turn it over? Was that the first side? Was that the second side? You get the idea. And it's handy to know which side you want to pull away from an area. So I just do that. So we have a negative. And what I'm going to do today, I'm going to make 3 versions of exactly the same stamp with the different methods, and I'm going to show you the result. So I'm going to give them all the same time, and then you'll be able to see what the difference is between the different methods. And although you may have a different gel, the basic method is the same, and different gels cure at different rates, but I can at least show you what the difference is from my perspective using the NG7 gel, which is what I've got. So my gel is NG7. It's made by the same company that makes the VX55. I decant it into small bottles for ease of use, and I keep them in a dark drawer. But they are fine to use when I take them out, perfectly alright. So I'm just going to put my gel in and hold it still. It's kind of self-leveling, this stuff. If I lift that up, you can see it's escaping to the corners and the bit that was raised is leveling out. If you're used to doing UV gel nails, it's very similar in consistency to that. You can't, however, use the nail gel for this, just in case anyone's wondering. It's not the same type of gel. It's UV activated, but it has different hardness. And to be quite honest, if you were to do this with nail gel, it would be dearer, because nail gel's not that cheap to buy. So if you have any little bubbles, you can try and get rid of them. Doesn't matter so much if there's the odd little bubble on the top, because this is going to be the bottom of your stamp, the bit that connects to the stamp block, that is, but you don't want any on the surface. So you then have another piece of the cellophane, put it over the top like that, take the other piece of glass. Now this frame is one that I make, and yes, I do sell them if someone asks me for them. But what you need to make sure is whatever you are using, it's a nice even depth. So I find this makes a big difference to making a stamp because it's always the same. So I'm going to put this into my lamp. Now I did give the lamp a chance to warm up a little bit. I put it on for a minute and then switched it off. But I'm going to put that in for 30 seconds. There we are. So this side of the stamp is actually cured. I did manage to move this plate, which normally I don't. Just happened to move, but it's still going to be fine because the design is still within the frame, so it's all right. So you then turn it over and you put it in the lamp again. And I'm going to give this, I think I'm going to give this 45 seconds. Now the reason I'm thinking 45 seconds is because these little vines here are very thin and I don't really want those to break, so they might need a little bit longer. 3, 2, 1, off. You must have a digital timer. You will not be able to do this without one. So this can be peeled off. I don't know if you can see the design in there, just about, perhaps. Peel off this side. There we go. So there's a little bit of gel left on here. You can see the design, and I'm going to actually go get a bowl of warm water and some soap and clean it off under the camera so you can see that as well. I've got some warm water in here, it's just lukewarm, some washing up liquid, drop some on there, and I've got 2 different nail brushes. For some designs I use the little round one, and for some I use this one, and sometimes I use both. So you can definitely see the design there now. Now this one is a much softer brush, and the reason I use this one sometimes is if I've got very fine designs and fine lettering and I'm not altogether sure whether I'm going to damage my stamp, I'll sometimes use this one. And sometimes I'll use this one to start with. If I think I've slightly under cured my stamp, I'll use this one because it's gentle. Then I'll flash cure it after I've got rid of most of the extra gel in there, flash cure it again, and then come back in and clean it up properly with the stiffer brush. This one is fine, absolutely fine. Now I've kept it on the frame because it's actually easier. It gives support to the stamp when you're cleaning it, and it's easier to get it all off. Now I need to give that some more soap because I can still see some gel on there, and I would probably take this into the bathroom next door to clean it normally because I have access to more water than I have here, and I like to clean it under running water. Put it in there. Now I can see, because it's very slightly cloudy still, there are remnants of gel there, but the stamp is perfectly formed. So I'm going to take this into the bathroom, clean it up properly, and then bring it back. Before I put my stamp under the lamp again to finally cure, I'm just going to show you the inside of my lamp. And if I take this out, you can see the bulbs, and you can see that these are actually rotatable, but that's what I mean about having them facing the outside and not the inside. Doing this, way too powerful, so they get turned to the outside like that. This is my stamp now that I've washed it off, but it needs a final cure to harden it. I have a shallow dish with some water, place it in there, and I will just switch this on for an automatic 2 minutes and just leave it to its own devices. My stamp frame, I can just take a piece of tissue and wipe it dry. I don't mind if there's still some sticky residue on here because it helps it to stay in place when I next use it, so that's fine. Do that. This is the amount of gel which is left attached to the other side. So there's a little slick of gel there, but there's not much. And that's exactly as it should be if it's well cured. So that was 30 seconds on one side, 45 seconds on the other, and I've got a perfectly formed stamp with this negative, which is done on tracing paper. So, you know, if anyone says, oh, you can't use tracing paper and your negative has to be completely black, you can tell them they're wrong. It doesn't have to be. It's helpful, but it doesn't have to be. The next one I'm going to do is this blue one. I'm going to use exactly the same method. What I'm going to do is put it on my glass, like so. Put a piece of cellophane over the top, place a frame, it's actually the same colour as the frame pretty much, fill it with gel and do exactly the same. And let's see if there's any difference in how this actually cures. I have a lint-free cloth, which I know looks absolutely gross, but it isn't. It's quite clean, it's just stained. And I shall sort this out in a second, but I'm going to put this one into my lamp first. Okay, that's on 30. So this is my fully cured stamp. Just peel it off the plastic, and there you go. Any slight fogginess there is just due to slight remnants of gel, and you can give it a good scrub with some soap under the tap, and that will get rid of that. There we go. It's amazing how quick that is, isn't it? I leave it to air dry, and I have a perfect usable stamp, and all I do is I trim off the edges as needed. So that is stamp number one, and I'm going to place it with that one. I'm going to turn this over and give it the 45 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, let's see how this one has come out. Now, admittedly, I use blue paper here, but you know, you can't see anything through the blue paper, so yeah, I can see the stamp design here. And here we go. That, to be honest, looks pretty much identical. I've just put the next stamp in here in the water to fully cure it. I couldn't see any difference at a quick glance between that and the others. So here's the vinyl one, and I'm going to do the same thing again with the vinyl. Big bubble in the middle there that I'm going to have to get rid of. And press. There we are. Put this in here and 30 seconds. Of course, you do realise the problem now. I've got so many stamps of the same design. I might have to give one away. All of the stamps have been trimmed off, dried, and this is what they're like now. So I had a look at them and I cannot see any great discernible difference between any of the three. So I figured the only way to tell whether there might be a difference is to actually stamp with it. So there's a stamp block, my Memento Black. And this is the very first time that these have been stamped. They've not been conditioned or anything else like that. Generally don't need it. There we go, one perfectly good stamp. Let's try this one. one perfectly good stamp. And I think we're going to get exactly the same result with the last one. Okay, I've got a bit there which is raised simply because I've got a little bit there that I haven't trimmed off, and I've got a little bit there that didn't get stamped, but that could just have been me. So let's just try it again and see. We shall see. Let's try this one again. Yeah, it's fine. It was obviously just the way that I stamped it. So I've got a little ridge there, which is just the bit that was out of the frame, so all I need to do is chop that off. I hadn't noticed it. And that's it. They all work perfectly well. So it looks as though no matter what method you use for making your negative, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get it to work with whatever method you want to use. The one that I would say is the most iffy is the negative, because you need to make sure your printer can print on tracing paper, but I've got a cheap Samsung and it does it just fine. Now, a word about the printing on the tracing paper. Don't automatically assume that the best thing to do is put it on the heaviest ink setting, because it isn't, it will smudge. You have it on a normal setting, a dark print, but a normal amount of ink or something, and you'll probably find that's the easiest way of doing it. But if you have die cuts that you want to use, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to use die cuts and do it in just the same way. The results appear to be the same. Now, in case you're thinking, well, actually your gel's different to mine, this one is the NG7, it's made by the same company. This stamp here, this big background stamp that I've done, that's made with the VX55. I was given one bottle of that to try, because I said, look, I can't give anyone any stamp curing times if I've never tried the gel. And I used that. The curing times were slightly different, but in my previous videos there are some curing times for the green gel. So there we go. I hope that's answered all your questions about negatives and how it's done. I label my stamp making videos with numbers. The higher the number, the more recent it is. So I think the top one up till now has been something like 40 or 41. So the more recent, the better the technique you're going to get, because I was learning when I started. I can now almost do these in my sleep, as long as nothing goes really, really wrong. Take care now. Bye bye.